This is a recording of Awakening, a Matter of Life or Death by Salim Michael. Chapter 3, Meditation and its Importance to the Aspirant's Quest. When a seeker sets himself to the practice of meditation, he finds himself, perhaps for the first time in his life, confronted with the extreme difficulty he experiences in remaining inwardly present and concentrated. He will discover with surprise that after barely a few minutes, or even a few seconds, he is carried away by a thought, an image, or a memory that crosses his mind, and without perceiving it, he finds himself again dreaming, plunged into a state that can only be called a waking sleep. It is only when a sudden return of consciousness seizes him and recalls him to himself that he is able to realize what has happened to him. To avoid being discouraged, he must know that, contrary to what he might imagine, a true practice of meditation is not, at the beginning, at all easy to undertake. It requires the most intense effort of which he is capable, and he must pursue that effort with untiring determination in order to one day attain a completely different state of consciousness. A very particular state of consciousness which he is ordinarily lacking. The aspirant needs to realize that what is demanded of him, which proves so different from what he is used to doing ordinarily, is to plunge into himself, into an invisible world which was hitherto unknown to him, in quest of the source which he originally arose and which he will be re-immersed at the end of his earthly existence, which from the beginning is destined to be only temporary. He must understand that recognition of this enigmatic aspect of his nature depends on his capacity to accept letting go of everything, from ambitions, imaginings, dreams, etc. When he accomplishes this descent into his being, he must come to realize, by way of a deep intuitive comprehension, that his future destiny is at stake in this spiritual undertaking that is so mysterious and impenetrable that for him it is truly a matter of life or death. As previously said, meditation practice, if it is approached seriously, demands an effort of concentration that is difficult to maintain at the beginning. Among the different concentration supports, such as the movement of the abdomen when breathing, or the global corporeal sensation, such as body scan, there is one that is of inestimable value, on which motivated seekers can rely when they are trying to meditate. There is a certain sound, called the nada in India, which resembles the continual murmur of the ocean waves, to which an ultrasound is added, and which seekers can hear inside their ears and heads if they succeed in creating sufficient silence in their minds. This concentration support is particularly important because it becomes even more audible when the aspirant is concentrating. However, this form of meditation, which today seems to be ignored, or even forgotten in India, is in danger, like any other kind of meditation for that matter, of losing its value if, because of the force of gravity, seekers begin without realizing it to sink into a state of subtle absence and practice it in a passive way. They may become used to perceiving this sound within them, but without being really inwardly present and concentrated in it in the way they should be. They need to be very circumspect and remain constantly on their guard, so as not to be satisfied simply because they hear the sound resonating in their ears. Indeed, after some time of practice, when this mysterious sound becomes easier to hear, it may be there in the aspirant while he is trying to meditate. But he will be, without realizing it, so to speak, absent, dreaming, or even lulled into an agreeable state of torpor that deceives him, giving him the impression of enjoying inner peace, which, without him perceiving it, it is deceptive. This is why it is useful to bring together the following three concentration supports. This particular sound that is audible inside the ears, the global sensation of his body, and the movement of his abdomen when breathing in and out. In this way, the risk of sinking back into his customary state of absence and dreaming will not be so great. Following his attempts to establish himself in a state of being different from that he habitually experiences, whether that is during the moments when he is trying to meditate or during his activities in external life, every time that, after a brief or long period of absence to himself, a return of consciousness abruptly makes itself felt within him. It is indispensable to the goal that the seeker hopes to attain spiritually for him to realize that at the very moment that he is thus called to himself, he is required to renounce a thought that is preoccupying him, a desire, or anything else that is attracting his attention externally, to make himself immediately inwardly available to this mysterious call. At the beginning of his engagement on a spiritual path, if he is really serious, the aspirant will be disconcerted when he encounters, in a way that he does not expect, difficulties with himself in creating the necessary silence in his mind, without which he cannot hope to discover what he is, unbeknownst to him, concealing in the depths of his being. His state of being is too unstable and disturbed by the worries of the outside world, as well by his desires, sexual or whatever, which constantly torment him and do not accord him the respite he needs in order to awaken to the miracle of the eternal that he carries within him. Furthermore, even if he believes he has understood the importance of this quest for him, if he has not yet acquired a certain degree of control of his rebellious mind and his automatic reactions to phenomenal existence, he will not be able to find within him the required strength to respond to this enigmatic call. Because of its extreme subtlety, this call inevitably remains muffled by the constant solicitations of existential life, as well as by the impressions that the seeker receives passively from outside and which, without him being conscious of it, exert such a strong grip on his mind. It seems difficult for the majority of aspirants to realize that the primary aim of meditation is to take them back to the present, where they never are ordinarily. Indeed, while they continue, without knowing it, to be preoccupied by the past, of which the immense mass of happy and unhappy memories that they carry within them manifest in the form of countless voices that are raised one by one to demand, lament, or recriminate, as well as by the future, which they ceaselessly anticipate by devising all sorts of projects to satisfy their desire and avoid the dangers it might have in store for them. The present moment is in this way inevitably stolen from them. It is only in succeeding, with the help of meditation, in remaining in the present, that they might one day discover within themselves what the Buddhists call the Dhammakaya and remain joined with it, which is the ultimate objective of their quest. The seeker must awaken to the reality of this situation in an uncertain world that is perpetually changing and understand that in this form of existence, it is impossible for him to find the tranquility of mind that he would wish to have to be able to respond with the necessary seriousness to that mysterious call when he feels it suddenly in his being. He must, despite all the agitations inherent to manifest life, all the problems he must continually resolve, the fear of tomorrow, and so on, find the strength to gather himself and turn his gaze inward to welcome, with the respect due from him to it, what he calls from an invisible universe within him, if he wants to succeed one day in recognizing the origin of this call, which in fact comes, without him realizing it in the beginning, from his own being, from the transcendent aspect of his nature. He must learn to use the very difficulties of this existence as means to elevate himself to levels of being and consciousness different from those that are habitual to him, if he wants to be able to draw nearer the infinite, whose nature, because of its extreme subtlety, is so difficult to grasp. It can only be very inadequately defined as an impersonal beingness, consciousness, or as the formless ineffable. This change in his consciousness and being cannot be accomplished without assiduous meditation practices, along with various specific concentration exercises that he must agree to undertake at the very heart of his external activities, despite the constant refusals that will arise in him at the beginning, which he must succeed in overcoming. The seeker cannot fail to notice that, as soon as he sits down to meditate, a mass of worthless thoughts, aimless inner chatter, and all sorts of desires, whose existence he had not previously suspected, suddenly arise within him, not to mention the subtle rustles that his mind ceaselessly devises to divert him from his quest. His mind may suggest to him that the moment is not right to begin such an adventure, that it would be better to put it off until later. Now the aspirant must realize that in this life, which by its very nature can only be in perpetual movement and full of unforeseen events, the opportune moment to consecrate himself to this spiritual work will never come. He must create it. That is why he must, if he has the chance of encountering a serious teaching, give himself with all of himself to his meditation practice. If he does not see the imperative necessity that there is for him to compel himself, that is to say, to go against the refusals that arise within him to undertake this work on himself, he may lose a precious opportunity offered to him by grace, which will perhaps never present itself again. He must consider that there exists in every man and woman an unfortunate tendency to want to always put off until later what they should do in the moment. A tendency that may, especially because of the tendency to inertia inherent to human beings, become an unshakable habit in the seeker. Unless a certain degree of silence establishes itself within him, a very particular transparency of being and of consciousness will always remain hidden from him by the incessant wanderings of his ordinary thoughts. This luminous state of being and consciousness can only be revealed to his inner vision after intense practice of concentration during his meditation, which is necessary to tear him away from himself, from what he habitually is.